David, I had to wait for you to come back because you were the one that was putting all the pressure on, saying that we were going to solve all the problems. Wanted to hear about solutions. So, no, I mean, so really what we're going to do with this panel, this is cyber innovation. But let's not forget our enemies are innovating as well. And it's kind of a really key piece. So part of this is I want to talk a little bit with the panel about what are our enemies doing. In order for us to innovate ahead of them, or to start getting ahead of the game, we've got to understand what's going on from that perspective. And as we know, no one company, no one solution can solve the entire problem of protecting us from a defense in depth type of situation. So, and also budget becomes a problem. Something we were talking, just listening to what the government folks were having to say, there's a budget issue. So ultimately, how do you prioritize? That's kind of the key piece. How do you innovate? What are you going to protect? You're going to protect the crown jewels, your intellectual property, PII, etc. What's the threat landscape? Again, we're going to ask them some questions on that. What's our largest vulnerability? And ultimately, prioritize the prioritization of strategic defense. So those are some of the questions I want the audience to think about. So we're going to ask a couple questions here, but then I'm going to open it up to you all who have sat here and listened to all sorts of different things today. So with that, let's go ahead and move to introductions. So I'm going to have my great panel team introduce themselves. I'm going to give a little bit of background on themselves, but keeping in mind of knowing your enemy, also give us a little bit of color as to what have you guys seen out there? What is the enemy doing? How are we staying ahead from an innovation standpoint, or the innovation panel? So with that, Sunil, I'm going to kick that over to you to kick this off.
Thanks very much. My name is Sunil Madhu, founder, former CEO and Chief Strategy Officer for Socure. We're a 6-year-old company based in New York. Our expertise is in digital identity verification. We built a robot, an artificially intelligent machine over the last 6 years that is able to discern the difference between real people, fake IDs, and fake people, and businesses, financial services companies, insurance companies, and healthcare businesses essentially use us to verify and identity proof the consumer customers that they have. We power 3 of the top 5 banks in the country, 3 of the world's largest remittance companies, 1 of the 2 largest e-commerce companies in the world, some of the largest lenders, payments processors, gateway systems, you name it. So that's kind of the realm of our work. The types of problems we're seeing, and I wouldn't call them enemies more than I would say that there are adversaries. The things that we're seeing are that our adversaries in this domain have an economic advantage. 6 times the US population's data has been stolen and is in the wild. So it becomes very easy for an attacker not to have to commit fraud themselves or to attack something themselves, but to walk through the front door of your organization, digitally speaking, having stolen someone else's identity. And that's a growing problem. Who we are, as it turns out, is at the crux of a lot of industries, and trust in the actors dealing with your business is kind of a key part of security. We are seeing sophisticated kind of attacks now from fraudsters and other cyber attackers exploiting this data at scale to attack every single part of the infrastructure. For example, stolen data is used to attack call centers at banks. They're used to attack people's accounts online or their mobile devices. The fraudsters are, because they have an advantage in that they don't have to pay taxes and they're not required to abide by the laws, they have an undue economic advantage in being able to use the very little piece of data that they have to amplify the scale of the attack. They're using artificially intelligent botnets. They're creating phishing attacks and viruses that are ever more intelligent in their behavior. They're trying to attack cryptographic systems and schemes with the advantage in GPU and other types of computing. I think we have some folks on our panel here talking about quantum cryptography and so on. So, you name it, they're using the breadth of the tools available. And our kind of thought to stopping this is really one of giving up, if you will, on the traditional notion of security and accepting the fact that no matter what layer of defense in depth technology you use and strategies you use, you're going to get breached. So if you look at the crown jewels, for a lot of companies it's data. And if you look at the data, the confidential information that you possess as the crown jewels, then the thinking is when the breach occurs, not if, when it happens, how do you ensure that that data is made completely useless to the attacker, that the attack doesn't really matter? That is, you accept the attack as normal, not the abnormal. So it kind of changes the paradigm of thinking. And how do we use all of this rich data that the attackers are using to attack us against them? How do you change the economics of the attacks that they perform against them? Because one common thing amongst all cyber threats is that the adversary wants to get away with the crime as soon as possible, because they know the longer they're in there, the more likelihood it is that they're going to get caught. So how do you make sure that the economics of making the attack feasible in any short period of time to get those pieces of data that's so valuable is made unfeasible? So those are the areas we're kind of working on.
No, that's great. I think you're going to I think the audience is going to kind of see a recurring theme here in accepting it's not a matter of if you're going to get attacked, it's a matter of when you're going to get attacked. And ultimately understanding that and really being able to prioritize where you're at and what you're going to protect. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Janine.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Janine Darling. I am the founder and CEO of Stash Data Protection, and like Deborah, I come out of business. Before I decided to actually focus on cybersecurity and actually data security, that particular silo of cybersecurity. I was in the commercial business sector for over 20 years, and I'm a business building expert by looking at risk, understanding how risk affects how to build a business, and then planning for that risk from the get-go. So basically starting at the end game, where do you want to be, and working backwards towards the solution. So what Stash Data Protection does, and it's a great segue from Sunil, is we protect the data bytes themselves, because it is absolutely so. There are wonderful, wonderful technologies, and we've heard about so many of them today, right? There are technologies that do a very good job of protecting the network and protecting the infrastructure, right? Protecting cyber currency, for instance. There's a lot of buzz around blockchain. Blockchain is a very hot topic right now. But I think what is happening in the industry is that the people who are trying to make decisions in the commercial sector about what kind of security solutions they should be using really don't know what various technologies do, nor how to put them together into a solution that really solves what we're all trying to do, and that is to protect our data. So in terms of our adversaries, the question's been asked in several ways and several different times today. Are they ahead of us? Are they behind us? Where are we? They're using everything that we're using, and they are trying as hard as we are to gain leverage in order to steal, do damage, manipulate, do harm. Okay? So they're doing exactly what we're doing. Where they have an advantage is, and again, the attack sector has been called out many, many times here. The attack sector is huge. There is no perimeter anymore. Okay? And so because the attack surface is so large, what they can do is throw spaghetti against the wall. Okay? And it doesn't take a nation state to do it. It doesn't take you know, a big operation with a lot of people. You can buy ransomware on the internet now for pennies on the dollar on the dark web. Okay, very, very easy stuff to do. So the challenge for us is, with all the layers of security, and we need them all, because you want to keep out as much of a riffraff as you possibly can, but if anybody thinks that any of the experts will not get to your data, it's a pipe dream, okay? There is no magic bullet. There is no magic. What is going to work is by taking all the technologies that we know are available to us and working together to understand what that security stack should look like. And if you don't have a data-centric component of that security stack, you might as well go home.
Perfect. Great. Pretty gloom and doom a little bit.
Sorry.
The next question's going to go about, all right, what are we doing about it? So with that, Eric, why don't we go ahead and introduce yourself, and love to hear your thought on the adversaries.
So I'm Eric Hay with Quantum Exchange. We're a company that's introducing quantum key distribution into the U.S. And this is not going to get any sunnier. So the purpose of quantum key distribution is what we use today, and I think I forget who said it in the first. I think it was Elad Yaron said that encryption is important and we should be encrypting, and a lot of people aren't, or they aren't doing it as much. Well, the encryption we use today, typically to establish secure connections and then send secret keys that we then use for other encryption, is called public key cryptography, right? And PKI or PKE, you think of HTTPS when you're in your browser and that sort of thing. That is going to be, if it's not already, under attack by something called quantum computing. And quantum computing isn't here yet, sort of, it is, but it's just not big enough. There's a lot of hype around it. But the bottom line is that a lot of people who have spent billions of dollars, including our biggest adversaries, at least state actors, believe that they are on the verge of being able to break this. So imagine all the secrets that you send from every device or over every network tomorrow are in clear text. So that's a little bit of a scare. Now, we don't have a quantum computer yet. It isn't going to happen yet. There's some time that it's going to take. The other thing, though, that people aren't talking about is something I call a quantum contrail, and that is that as people are developing quantum computers, there's this pull along from classical algorithms, and so there's this thing called quantum-inspired algorithms. And bottom line is that as we play with these new tiny quantum computers that are around and we build these algorithms, people are learning to tweak classical computer algorithms to do things that people thought previously were quantum only. So I'll give you an example. You can see me for the exact spelling of the name. It's Ewan Tang. He's a teenager, 18, who just solved the next recommendation problem. And that is basically, what's the next movie Netflix should recommend to you based on all the movies you've seen and all the people like you have seen and all the choices they've made? How do they get you the next best recommendation? And it was thought prior to last month that this was a quantum-only solvable problem. You had to have a quantum computer do it. Scott Aronson, who's a big proponent of quantum computing and also a good skeptic of it, said this would be a good test to show that quantum computers are required to do this type of work. And this kid, who's 18, solved it. So he did a quantum-only problem with a classical computer in not a billion years, like quickly, like in quantum speed.
So you like the movie?
What? Yeah, so the point is that as we play with quantum computers, we're learning more about how to do better filtering algorithms and things to solve these problems. So again, the way public key encryption works is you have what's called a semi-prime number. It's a product of two prime numbers, right? So my line is that the previous financial crisis was due in no small part to the failure of subprime mortgages, and I think an upcoming financial crisis is going to be due to the failure of semi-prime numbers, right? So if you're using mathematics, which is provably breakable, it just takes a long time to secure your data, then maybe you need to think about, well, let's say that timeline isn't a million years, let's say it's 10. Is the data I'm sending today, because that's what the adversary is looking at right now, is that data worth protecting with something stronger? And adversaries are doing it. GCHQ is not quite an adversary, right? That's one of the Five Eyes, that's our ally. There's a program, you can look it up, it's called Tempora, where they're basically going in, scarfing up all the internet traffic that they care to see. Now, it's all encrypted. It's all encrypted with public key encryption. So why would they be collecting it and storing it? Because you can't break it in 10 billion years, right? Unless maybe they know something we don't. So, and the Chinese are doing it. They've been doing it at 2010. They sucked 15% of all the internet traffic. Most of it was encrypted, but a lot wasn't. A lot was encrypted with weaker encryption too. They sucked all that up and they stored it somewhere, so they get encrypted at a later date. So data today that you're sending, and long haul to the cloud or to wherever you're sending from data center to backup data center, disaster recovery center, is all going over these networks, and that data is being monitored and sucked off of there, and it's encrypted. But it may not be encrypted for long, and I think that's the threat. And I like to say, you know, somebody brought up Willie Sutton. I forget who it was, in the first panel, or second panel, brought up Willie Sutton, who was the famous bank robber, and they said, you know, Willie, why do you rob banks? And instead of saying, you know, I need money, whatever, he said, why rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? And I like to point out that Willie Sutton wasn't a pickpocket. So as much as we focus on the endpoint, your biggest, strongest adversaries are looking for the biggest, fattest data pipe that has all the secrets. All my data gets aggregated from those endpoints and goes to some central location to the cloud. Why wouldn't I listen on that? So that's the sort of problem that we need to start tackling, because that's the one that's under attack right now. And I think Arvind Krishnan, who's the head of IBM's quantum research group, said 2 months ago, I think 2.5 months ago, said, if you have any data today that you're transmitting that you need to be secret for more than 10 years, you need to go right now and implement an alternative form of encryption.
Yep.
That's from the guy that runs IBM's quantum development. So and they don't even offer a quantum-proof solution, so he's not even selling anything, which I find astounding. Anyway, so that's the problem space. I think that's how the adversary is thinking. Let's go collect all this data today, and we'll worry about decrypting it as soon as we get done with our machine in the back room.
I want to add a bit of sunshine to that, actually.
That would be nice.
It seems like, you know, that's the end of the world, right? Everything encrypted becomes unencrypted. It's actually a misnomer. So quantum computers give you exponential boost in solving factoring problems instead of key search problems.
Yes.
So you don't need a quantum computer. Like, for example, if you use AES encryption, which is approved by the US government, that's 2 to the power of 256 keys, or 1 followed by 77 zeros. And if you apply a quantum computer to just sort of brute force the search space, a quantum computer would do a quadratic speed up, not exponential.
Yep.
And it would change that to 2 to the power of 128 keys, or 3 followed by 38 zeros, right? So it's still, you know, those type of problems are still intractable, but the problems that fall into, I believe, the hidden subgroup problems in mathematics are the ones where quantum computers excel at exponential scale, which is why PKI is definitely defeated. It is not an if, it is done.
Absolutely, and to be clear, I said PKI, PKE, and the reason that's important is that's the tunnel that we use to send all those symmetric keys that are used for AES. So if I'm an adversary and I want to monitor somebody today, I pick off their public key handshake and their connection to the cloud, let's say. Then I pick off their symmetric key that gets transmitted over the tunnel that gets created there. Then I pick off the data that they encrypted with that key. And when I get my quantum computer, I decrypt it all and I have everything. So you're right, if you encrypt data at rest with an AES key, that's not
Or lattice
as vulnerable.
encryption, for example.
Yeah.
I believe NIST and the NSA started 2 projects in 2015, 2016 that are going to publish the results in the next 3 years, where we'll know how much of this stuff will withstand quantum computing.
Yeah.
We are working to get a little bit ahead of the adversary, so that's great. Arun, over to you. Please introduce yourself. You have a fascinating background as well.
So this thing says professor. Yes, I'm a professor. But what I want to talk about is some research we did has led to a spin-off, which is large-scale networks. So effectively, my first challenge was to understand how a cyber kill chain works. What are the bad guys doing? I mean, what are the steps they take? Right now, I open all the stuff that everybody's talking about, detection and prevention, all these kind of good stuff. Based on my knowledge, it's not working. You go and look, all the stuff is just not working. So why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again? All right. We do it again because we have equipment in place which does these things. Because these things are being done by this equipment, they're focused on continuing to do this task here. Okay, so I said, okay, let's step back and try to understand how people are attacking us. How does the attacker work? The attacker works essentially using 3 steps. The first step is get in. They have to get in somehow. Usually it is a small thing somewhere which is not, which itself is not dangerous, but it's easy to get in. So that's the first step people use to get into the system. The next step is what's called staying. They stay in the system, and this usually means that they are moving through the system to the place where the data is stored. So this is a sort of a migration through the system, lateral movements through the system to get to the data. And the last step is, of course, once they get to the data, they can exploit all their skills, downloading the data, changing the data, or whatever. So the cyber kill chain effectively means taking the steps of get in, stay in, and act. Now, it's if, and this is a big if you can prevent all get-ins, you don't need me. But when you can prevent all get-ins, please come and tell me that you can do that, right? So, preventing all get-ins is going to be very difficult. So, we started asking that question, how do we reduce the amount of time people have to stay in and act? Notice, when you're preventing get-in, you never take time into account. So the biggest example, one of my motivators I use in my class is this movie. What's the movie called? Clooney's movie where he actually attacks Ocean 11, sorry. So I'm talking about Ocean 11. So the attack is on Ocean 11. He's going into the wall. They get into the wall. Now what does he do? He looks at his watch. I have to get out of here before the guy comes. That is exactly what is happening in all these places. We have to figure a way by which we constantly look at the system and we look at it over and over again so that the bad guys have only limited amount of time. Okay, so once I came to this conclusion after this took me 6 years to get through to this finding, I'm very slow. So the next thing which I started doing was a very simple idea. Okay, so now we know that we have to reduce the amount of time. And how do we do this? At this point, I started shifting focus from only looking at detection and prevention, but to start looking at recovery. Frankly, when I talk to people, their conclusion is, if they can recover quickly, that's good enough for them. Who cares whether somebody came into my system or not? If I can recover quickly, I'm happy. Okay, so we started shifting to recovery. At this stage, I've got to tell you that I am only solving the problem for a very small subset of things. And those subset of things which I'm looking at are servers. I only look at servers. Unfortunately, I don't have a solution for, of course, there are many more endpoints than servers, so if I could find a solution for endpoints, it would be much better. But the solution is on servers. Now the question, so we have agreed, we're going to reduce the amount of time. We have agreed that we are going to recover. The question is, can you apply this to servers? And that's what we have done. We are actually constantly recovering servers to what I call the clean state over and over again, so that if somebody comes in, they only can do damage for a limited amount of time. So that's my suggestion.
That sounds very similar to frequency hopping. Basically, you're server hopping. So you're basically constantly recovering. So they may see a piece of the attack surface, they may get a piece of it, but they won't be in long enough to do it. So,
well, there are two things that will actually help the future. One is, you talked about get in and stay in. So you can solve forgetting, at least with the context of servers rather than, say, industrial systems you're always on, by moving to headless systems. So there is nothing to get into until the request comes in on demand and then something comes up. And then the stay-in subsequently is improved because, just like you've said, you can turn the server into an ephemeral thing. So if I put a rootkit on it, it doesn't matter because after 20 milliseconds after the response came out of that server, the server goes poof. Right? So I think that cloud computing is basically adopting the kind of blueprint that you've sort of created in the research over the last 6 years.
And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and talk a little bit about simulation. So I'm going to kick it over to Bryson, fellow West Point.
Who in this room has ever met an APT? In person? You've met one? Where'd you meet him? Advanced Persistent Threat, the bad guys.
I met a guy who wrote an APT. So.
What's that?
I said I met a guy who wrote an APT. So.
You wrote a guy who wrote an APT. Who was that?
Well, I'm not sure how to.
All right, well, for the rest of you, I'll have to steal that info.
Somebody planting malware on your phone or ransomware on your phone through your phone?
I wouldn't call that an APT per se, except for, I mean, North Korea operates as basically an organized, nation state of crime. They're the mafia, but on the nation state level. But everyone else, no, they're not going to tend to do ransomware. That's going to be more just straight criminal activity. So I have been an APT for other countries. By other countries, I mean good guy being APT against the bad guys. I built one of the major capability development groups in the world. So when we talk about the attacker perspective, I have an entire career of building attack tools and weapons. I started off as an Army officer in much simpler times, just going very quickly certain directions and blowing things up with dramatic effect. This computer stuff is way too complicated. It was much easier just to watch it go boom. Since then, I have founded a boutique consultancy called Grim. I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit called the Industrial Control System Village, where we advance education and awareness around critical infrastructure. And then I've just launched a startup called Scythe, where, this is not going to be a surprise, we are an attack simulation platform. So we allow you to commercially develop the entire attacker space of an APT on your production environment to see what would actually happen. Since we're going to be talking about threats, I thought I would highlight two things that have happened in the last 24 hours. First of all, there's been a spam botnet of over 6 million computers that's been out there since 2017 called Leakers. As of yesterday, it has been identified that they have repurposed those 6 million computers to target banks and credit processors. Kind of convenient for a MasterCard conference, I would say. Well done, John. That's good timing. What this malware does once it lands is it immediately checks to see if it is on a credit or bank processing network. They are going after big bucks. Going back to where's the money? They are going for the money. The current most popular approach for an adversary, because yes, I'm telling you from the hacker perspective, we are lazy. We're absolutely lazy. It is a game of statistics and economics and what is the least amount of work I can do for the greatest effect.
Path of least resistance.
Path of least resistance is email. Why is email my friend? The marginal cost difference between sending one email and 1 trillion emails, near negligible. I can just keep doing it. I can spin up bots to do it. I can spin up bots to change my infrastructure. So as you come back and with your threat intelligence and sinkhole my domains or my IPs, I just keep switching them. Not hard. And how many clicks does it take for me to get in? It takes one. And here's the best part about it. I don't even need you to click on purpose. People click on accident. You ever thought of that? People accidentally click on an email and that's
You
it.
don't even need to click because it could be HTML and trigger or something like that.
There are certainly different approaches to that. But again, I'm lazy. So I want to click, less technically sophisticated. But going to a future state of affairs, the threat that I see on the horizon is we all talk about IoT and everybody brings their hands and says IoT is not secure. It's $39 garbage. It's coming over from China and Vietnam and Taiwan, and it's just completely wide open. Yes, but who cares? Consumer certainly doesn't care. They're willing to pay the $39 for the webcam versus the $79 for the webcam. And as a consumer, I really don't care if you DDoS Brian Krebs. Doesn't change it working for me. So where's the incentive to change? It's not coming from the consumer, and it never will. But here's the thing that affects all of us. The concept of herd immunity, right? If you think of secure systems as some level of inoculation in our environment, the introduction of IoT is reducing the immunity of the herd, which makes us all more insecure. And so that is the missing gap, is it's not the end consumer, and it's not even the fact that the IoT device is insecure unto itself. It's the increased surface area and opportunity to pivot and to move from, and all of capitalizing on all of that computation that's out there that I can take advantage of to do something like eCurse, or research that I'm working on that I'll be presenting later this year is, what about those IoT devices being my entire non-attributable internet? Come and try to find me.
So can I add to that?
Absolutely.
It is estimated that in a few years there are going to be 50 billion connected devices. So there's all your endpoints. There is the IoT, 50 billion devices. And what most people think about when they think about devices, of course, is your computer, your cell phones, your tablets, whatever. What is being connected is your washing machine, your refrigerator, your heating and cooling system in your home, your car, okay? And so all of those things combined, to your point, have increased the attack surface to the point where there is no way that we can protect all those endpoints. And I think that the other thing that is a challenge, particularly in the customer environment, whether it's a business customer or consumer, is that tricky balance between simplicity, automation, and effectiveness. Right? Where do you find that balance so that you gain the most security that you can, while incentivizing because it's simple to use and it's automated and I don't have to think about it? They generally don't go hand in hand. If something is really secure, it may not be, you may need to take a few more steps, right? And I think as a populace worldwide, that we have gotten really, really lazy. The IoT is wonderful because it makes everything easier, right? Simple, fast, all we have to do is push a button. Pretty soon all we're going to have to do is think and things will happen. Okay? So that's a challenge. I think that another thing that I worry about, another risk that I worry about a lot is the weaponization of AI. And what I mean by that is, there's the idea that, and I know that Elon Musk has come out, Warren Buffett has come out and said, this is going to be the end of our civilization. And I have to tell you that in some ways I really do believe that. Because AI, some of you may know about an experiment that Facebook conducted, I don't know when, a year ago or something. I was fascinated by it. So I remember thinking to myself, oh yeah, this is exactly what it's going to be like. And I was thinking about the Battlestar Galactica remake from like 2011 and how the robots took over the world. I was thinking, this is honestly, I think about in some ways that's where we're headed. What Facebook did was use artificial intelligence to have some bots begin to talk to each other and do things together. And eventually they locked Facebook out, created a whole different language on their own, and they were able to disable them at some point. But this is all, there are people out there, organizations out there, many of them that none of us even know about, with really smart people who are working with AI, and we have no idea what they're building.
AI is always going to be 2 patches behind, so it'll always be exposed.
There you go. And there's our opportunity. Yeah.
See, I don't think it's that bleak, Janine, because the thing you're talking about is a new stream of AI called generative adversarial networks, where one part of the AI plays good cop, and the other one plays bad cop, and you can iterate very rapidly to figure out the right solution. The thing with AI is we are nowhere. I mean, I'm looking back at AI, the first AI revolution in the 80s. I'm 47. So, between that to now, we've gone from export systems to export systems. We haven't gone any further. we've managed to train expert systems and neural networks very rapidly because of GPU and compute scale and distributed computing, but we haven't really made an iota of an inch in improving an artificial intelligence system that is general purpose.
No, I agree with
Right?
you. I agree.
So, you know,
there are people working on it. I guess what I'm trying to say is as they tinker with it, kind of like Frankenstein's monster,
sure.
right? As they tinker with it, they don't know what they're releasing as they continue to, you know. I mean, it's like anything else. I think that all technology is a two-sided coin. You know, there are wonderful things that they bring to us in terms of making our lives more productive, easier, better in a lot of ways. But I think the flip side of that is like anything else. It's how our adversaries are able to take that kind of technology, really good things, and they're going to use it. So it's the same thing.
I'm just
So I have a comment about AI researchers. The problem is AI researchers are totally a bunch of people who are always in turmoil. As soon as they discover a solution, it gets input into the system, and then they say it's no AI, not AI any longer. It's only AI where the solution is not there. So I think the point is, AI has a bad name attached to it, but the fact that we are cloning human beings, I mean, all this stuff is going on. It's not only with respect to AI. You've got clones being developed all over the time. So they, you can come up with, you can create confusion about all of them all the time, right? So I think we can make get too concerned with all this in my view.
I think I'm cynical in that I think our industry generally has been using fear, uncertainty, and doubt as a mechanism of self-negotiation.
It's called marketing. Let me open this up to the audience for a couple of different questions. I know we're probably getting pretty short on time, so go ahead.
Yeah, regarding AI, another thing about AI is that we think of AI as being this sort of amorphous, autonomous thing that exists in a vacuum. But AI is programmed by people. And as a result, AI gets biases that are put in, that are coded in by people as well.
So if you look at Alpha 0, that's not true. So Alpha 0 didn't take any human input at all to train itself to play Go 100 times better than AlphaGo, which beat the world's best Go player. So the concern is that if you take these machines that can now train themselves, and representational classification is the reason why there's biases in AI. Meaning, if I were to train a computer vision system today, and I'm going to use the corpus of face libraries that are easily available from universities such as Columbia, I will find that those data sets have intrinsic representational biases in them. The more white people, fewer women, and fewer people of color in those pictures. So the problem is one of culture, right? So if culturally something is let's say, I'll use a concrete example. In the old days, 4 years ago, Facebook had 2 genders in it, right? Male and female. In 4 years, Facebook now has 22 genders in it. So if I were to create an AI for back then, that AI would be intrinsically biased against transgender people because there's no such concept in that representational sort of state. So I agree with you that making a bias-free system is difficult, but we are beyond the point where people are required to teach or supervise AI. AI can learn unsupervised by themselves in certain domains, following certain rules, and that's where a lot of people's, I believe, unfounded fears are coming from. That we're creating Skynet and Terminator, and Tesla's worried. Elon Musk cares about AI killing people because in the cars that he's creating, the AI has to decide how to kill people if there's a mechanical failure in the car.
Well, so I think it's two sides of the same. Parameterization is important. Right? So where you're getting the weights for your neural networks, where you're doing that, is all going to be based on the data. What the AI eventually is going to do is going to be based on how it's trained, and that's where I think we become important.
Perfect. Another question over here?
Yeah, quick question. It looks like this last panel was focused on innovation, and I enjoy sort of the back and forth in terms of parsing different aspects of AI and the rest, but it sounds like you each sort of represent either a new concept or new technology from an innovation standpoint. And I sort of missed some of that in terms of if you can each kind of encapsulate where your niche of the innovation world is. I think Professor Arun was the clearest in terms of understanding his time dimension aspect, but the rest of it were very good in terms of describing the problem, but I didn't know what your focus is on solving the problem.
All right, so we'll start with Sunil and then we'll work our way down to Bryson. Skipping your room.
What we do is we use machine learning, predictive analytics, and put it in the AI bucket to help put trust into identity. We're using innovation to identify all of the people in the world. That's our goal. Identify all of humanity. That's our goal.
So this is a image-related technology that you're
It
using?
uses multiple dimensions to identify people.
And you do database searches against other
We're a
sources?
real-time system. We span the entire internet and all the credit bureaus and all the telecom companies and a bunch of, and we're fed data from the largest institutions, private and public. And so this thing is kind of learning about people and the behavior online and offline around the world.
Got it.
So just to build on this time business, so the thing is, how much time does an attacker need to do damage? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So I've been asking this question, in fact I had this discussion out here also. You read that somebody has been in the system, DNC, the guys were there for months. Do they really need months to do damage? Probably not. So you figure out how much time do they need. There are some studies, recent studies, which seem to say this is of the order of a few hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. So what I am focused on is reducing the dwell time of the attacker in the system. That's it. I just want to reduce his dwell time. He has gotten somehow. I'm not worried about it. I'm letting other people worry about it. But the way I look at it, you're attacking somewhere, you're looking at threats and all that, all that is going on. I have no control over it. There's somebody else going on. But the guys come on my goddamn platform. And I still can't control it. Shame on me. I am very committed to try to make sure that the bad guys don't stay in the system. So we have built systems where people are kicked out at 97. Okay, so.
Janine?
So what stash data protection does, it's different than 99.9% of the security tools that are out there. And what it does specifically is protect the data, and that is called data-centric security. Now, how it does that is it takes data, it encrypts it, and it spreads it around to various domains that our customers choose. But there is also a secret sauce to it that makes data resilient and with integrity for decades. Okay, so no matter how technology changes, you're still going to be able to access your data. So while all the other complementary methods are analytical, predictive, defensive, Stash actually concentrates just on the data bytes themselves and stays with them wherever they go. So, if somebody does get in, what they would have to do is to find all the pieces, unencrypt each piece, put it back together, and then they would have access to your data. It is statistically improbable to nil that they'd be able to do that.
So you're the digital Iron Mountain, essentially.
Digital confetti.
Yeah. Thank you.
Eric?
So as I said, people are listening in on these networks and they're going to break these keys eventually. And so what we do is we use quantum physics to protect the keys. So it's no longer a math problem, it's a problem of quantum physics. We send an individual photon, which you can't copy. You can read it, and when you read it, it's gone. You can't split off a section of the light. It's basically an immutable quantum element. And we use photons between two locations to derive a encryption key that can then be used on both sides to create a tunnel that a quantum computer would break, using AES encryption, for example. So because you can't see it, you can't listen to it, you can't break it. And that's really at a high level, that's basically what we're doing, right? And the magic is, if you think about all the other ways that we send stuff, we create a tunnel, we send a key. This is using this sort of magic of quantum physics, which is hard to get your head around. Both parties at the same time agree based on a single stream of photons, that this is the key that we ought to be using. And if anybody is in the middle trying to listen to it, the photons that they could possibly read aren't part of that agreement, and so they never can get the key. So that's basically it. It's a way to give secure key distribution in an era when people are actively listening to get all our keys.
And I took quantum physics at Columbia, so.
There you go.
Who are the parties that get the keys? Is this any company?
Who's got the money? That's really
How big an entity does that have to be to make use of it?
Well, so we're actually offering this in two ways. One, you can deploy hardware and we recognize that that's more expensive. And the other is that people can decide that they want to do this as a service and then they can pay on depends on what their consumption rate is and how quickly they need them. And so they would tie into the various network locations that we've got and be able to distribute keys to different locations on their network. So it really depends. But it's not going to be smaller businesses today. Right now it's forward-leaning, global 2,000, maybe 5,000, large entities.
Because it's what? The infrastructure to do it, or because of the cost structure?
Well, just to give you one idea, just
Your
in
distribution.
the thing that listens for the photon has to be cooled to 40 degrees below zero. So that piece of hardware is probably, it ain't cheap.
Also, this is a problem as well, as I understand it, right? Because you can, if you do dense wavelength, what's it called, multiplexing, multiple colors of fiber, and you transport it over certain distances, the fidelity of the photon itself may be lost.
Yeah, a photon runs out of light in 100 kilometers-ish. We've done 300 in the lab, but we actually have a patented technology that allows us to extend the distance any length.
Yeah, I think China did one with quantum entanglement, right?
Yeah, well, theirs is BB84, but yeah.
Right. Bryson?
So Scythe is an attack simulation platform. What we do that's different is this is not another approach to penetration testing, which merely maintains the status quo. We looked at where does an attacker have to go instead of trying to go to them. And post-exploitation, they always do the same thing, right? They drop code. I mean, you walk through what those steps are. Well, if you look at what that code does, it does two things. It talks, and it does things. And how it talks is it's talking over your wires because, well, this quantum entanglement thing is interesting. I haven't seen code drop yet to just do that on any PC. So they're going through your wires, which means they have to talk through the communication protocols that your business allows. They can't bring their own to the game. They have to use yours because they have to blend in. And that's a finite number of ways that businesses talk to each other. And then looking behavior-wise of what they do, there's a limited number of things that I as an attacker want to do. Right? I'm not getting on your computer and playing solitaire. I'm stealing credentials. I'm stealing your keys. I'm doing passive and active surveying. I'm crypto jacking, or I'm ransomware. I'm doing escalation or lateral movement. Putting all of the permutations of those behaviors with the limited number of communications that are available provides you the entire potential space of what an attacker can be and do. That's what we do. We allow you to emulate that in your environment continuously.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank the panel and thank you all for. I want to